I had a very troubling social interaction the other day. I went to a influencer event over the past weekend with my friend, and it was for this bikini company. It was super fun. It was very kind of like small and intimate. All of the girls were super nice. I always get really, obviously you guys know I have social anxiety, so I always get really nervous before things like that, especially, I don't know, I just feel like I haven't really been to many influencer events, and I've just heard stories of like sometimes when you meet people who are, you know, have a presence online, when you meet them in real life, they're just way different, and so sometimes I just get nervous. I mean, I always get socially anxious around things like that. But everyone was super nice and it was such a good time. But I was having a conversation with these two girls, and we kind of just were talking, realized that we're sort of from the same, grew up in the same general area, and so I was like, oh my gosh, what high school did you go to? You know, thinking maybe we might know similar people or know some of the same people. And one of them asked me, what year did you graduate? And I was like, 2016. And then they go, oh, so you're older. And I was just speechless. They didn't mean it in a mean way. I mean, they were literally 22. I probably was one of the older people there. It was weird. I felt very taken aback and was like, am I older? I don't think of 25 as being old, but you know, thanks. So that was kind of depressing. They definitely weren't trying to be mean about it. They were just, you know, they were like, oh, so you're older than us, but yeah. But you know, I'm glad that they sounded shocked that they didn't think I was 25. They assumed I was younger, so that's cool. Anyways, I thought that would be an appropriate story to tell the podcast, since, you know, it's all about life in your 20s. And I feel like, I really feel like 25 is that turning point, like that age where you're like, I'm inching closer to 30. When you're 20 to 24, everything seems fine. You don't really have the conscious realization that you are getting older. You're just, I'm young and fun, living life. Life's great. And then I feel like you hit 25 and you're like, I don't know, guys, I'm actually in it now. I don't know what it is about being 25. I'm literally turning 26 in a couple months, and I like actually don't want to think about it. It's so dumb though. I was talking to someone the other day because I was telling them the story that I just told you guys, and I think the person I was talking to was maybe like 27 or around that age, and we were just talking about like how weird it is that we feel older even though we know that we're not. Like, we know we're not old, but we just can't help but feel old. And then we were both just like, it's so weird how guys just don't have this same experience, and how society treats them better as they age and more looks up to them more as they age, whereas women, it's sort of like you decline in value, which obviously is stupid. And I've talked about this before in my episode, I Feel Old, pretty much my first episode ever. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely listen to that one, because that's kind of talking about just getting older and being in your 20s and just all of that stuff. Anyways, thought I'd share that story with you guys. I'm also going to be telling you guys another story. So obviously from the title of this episode, if any of you guys are OG followers of mine, you will remember this story, because I did a story time on my YouTube channel back in the day about when I did acid when I was 16 years old, and it was quite the wild story. So I'm sure a lot of you remember. I think I deleted it though, or I made it private, so you can't see it anymore, but I'm gonna be telling you guys the same exact story. So if you don't remember it, or if you want a little refresh, here we go. And the reason I'm telling this story, because it probably seems super irrelevant based on the title, but I think that I want to kind of talk about things that I would tell my teenage self, and kind of mistakes I made in my teenage years, and if I could go back in time, what I would just tell my teenage self. Because I just feel like you learn so much, and you look back at your younger self and you're like, oh, I just wish I could just take her little hand and just tell her all the things I know now. But of course we can't do that, and that's just part of life, right? Like, you need to experience these things and make mistakes. That's kind of what your teenage years are for. But if I had the ability to go back in time, there are some things that I would say. I would probably leave some things out, because again, I feel like we just need to experience these things. I wouldn't be the person I am now if I hadn't made mistakes and done those things when I was a teenager. So I just kind of want to take a trip down memory lane. If any of you guys who are watching are in your teenage years, or even like really early 20s, I feel like there are so many things that I just wish I could tell my younger self, like 18, 19, 20, 21. That person, even 22. So let's start off with the story of when I decided it would be the greatest idea ever to drop acid, LSD, when I was 16 years old, when my brain was still developing. Let's do a psychedelic when I'm a child. Great idea. I really did think it was a great idea. Like, I was so convinced that doing this was going to completely change my life and turn it around. Like, it's one thing to do a drug just for fun, because that seems like the normal reason why a teenager would do it. Like, let's just do this, it sounds fun and crazy, and let's be wild, let's be silly. But no, I was like so invested in this. I genuinely thought that this was going to completely turn my life around. My life was going to be magical. All of my dreams were going to come true. I was going to achieve all of my goals. Acid was going to change my life in every wonderful way possible. So I was 16, obviously, and let me give you a little synopsis. I don't know if that's the correct word. Let me paint the picture of who I was as a 16-year-old child, teenager. So I'm gonna say when I was in 8th grade, probably towards the end of 8th grade, was when I sort of started having lots of thoughts. And it's kind of like I just started maturing, right? Like, I started thinking more about life and the future. I feel like you don't really think about the future much when you're younger. You just kind of live day by day. When I was in 8th grade, so I was 14, I was always kind of like a little bit older in my grade. So I think I was 14. Was I? Yeah, I was 14. And I just started thinking about things and my future and what I wanted in life and who I wanted to be. And I started having all of this kind of like self-reflection. When I was in 8th grade, that's when I started really realizing that I really wanted to travel. That was like my huge goal. I got really obsessed with just learning about other places, and that's when I got really obsessed with Australia. And I just, for some reason, was like, I'm gonna move there. I want to go there so bad. Started doing research and just, yeah, thinking a lot about my life. I became a lot more introspective. And anyways, then when I was 15, I don't know, once I got to high school, I just was really trying to figure myself out, and I definitely wanted to be a certain type of person. I remember my freshman year, I really wanted to be like a stoner girl, which is so weird because I was always kind of like, I don't know how to describe myself. I was like definitely like a straight A student, super good student. I never really broke the rules, but at the same time, I do have a very like innate rebellious spirit. Like, if I will follow the rules more because I follow the rules for my benefit, if that makes sense. I don't want to get in trouble, not because, well, I don't want to get in trouble, A, because I don't want to disappoint people, but only certain people that I like. I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to get in trouble. I would say that I follow the rules for very selfish reasons, and I will break the rules if I do disagree with them, and I have absolutely no trouble breaking rules if I think they're stupid, and I will be very vocal about thinking they're stupid. Like, I could definitely be a little brat when I was younger to authority figures. I despised, and still do, being told what to do, and then anyone having any power over me. Like, I'm just like, my way or the highway. You don't get to tell me what to do. And this is why, folks, I don't have a traditional job, because I don't do well in those environments. I need to be my own boss, and I can just be really a brat to authority, and I always have been. And yeah, so anyways, I was always a straight A student, and I never really got in trouble because I think I was smart about it. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get in trouble because what does that get me, right? Like, there's no point in getting in trouble. I'm just gonna follow these rules. I'm gonna do my homework, get straight A's, get good grades, whatever. And I always thought, I guess I didn't really know much about drugs, but I like, people kind of started smoking weed. Like, there were definitely some kids in 8th grade that would smoke weed. And I was just like, that is not me. Like, I would never do that. That's scary and gross, and drugs are bad. And even like alcohol's bad. And then I don't know what switched in my brain, but when I got into freshman year, I think I just was like, oh, I'm in high school now. I want to be this like cool, mature girl. And I just kind of really, I mean, I grew up in Southern California, so I really started getting attracted to that kind of like surfer, skater, grungy, stoner aesthetic, and just like that type of person, and I just thought it was cool. And there was this area at my school, because we were outside because it's California, so at lunchtime there was this area, and you know, like, it's high school, so everybody kind of forms in groups, and there's different areas where different people hang out, and there was this area called the wall, because it was a wall that you could sit on, and all the kids that would hang out at the wall were all of the kind of like stoners, skater, like, I guess surfers, but mostly like stoners and skaters kids. Definitely, like, you know, I'm sure most of them were nice, but probably not like the most, the best influences of people. These kids definitely probably weren't mostly getting straight A's. Some of them, like, I'm not saying they're dumb, but, you know, school was not really their priority. And I don't know why. I just like thought, I started wearing like flannels and ripped jeans, and I just for some reason really wanted to be one of these people. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna smoke weed, which I did, but I never really got like that into it. Like I really wanted to, but I just like I would do it like quite often, but I just like was never really that into it. Like I would do it if other people were doing it, but I wouldn't really like go out of my way to do it, right? Like if it was there, I would do it, but I wasn't like, I think I wanted to like it more than I actually did. So kind of around that same time period was also when I got into being vegan. And I just, yeah, I went down this wild path of trying all these different things and getting really like obsessed with things. And obviously you guys know I started my YouTube channel, so if you're OG followers, you remember me like being my little raw vegan self. And it's so funny because I was doing this raw vegan thing, but I was also going to party. There was like this weird overlap. I started going to parties my freshman year, so I started drinking alcohol, smoking weed. I really wanted to be this like hippie girl, but then at the same time I felt like on the internet I was kind of putting on this facade of like, ooh, I'm like this healthy, wholesome girl, which I was like, hello, I'm a teenager. Smoking weed and drinking aren't the worst possible things you could be doing, but I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like there was kind of this contrast in my life. Like I wanted to be a lot of things, and I was very torn. But anyways, when I went vegan, I got very into, I just kind of became like this hippie. I would like smoking weed, was really into like listening to music, which I always have been, but just kind of got more into it. Would definitely change my style a little bit. Really wanted to be like a surfer girl, and obviously really into being vegan and like the environment and just eating fruit, and I don't know, I was just really getting into being a hippie. And I really liked the idea, and I was like, well, hippies do acid. And I don't really know like what sparked the idea. I think I had a friend who might have done it, or like some of the older girls in high school had done it, and I was like, okay, like this sounds cool. And like I said, I really wanted to be like those girls because they were very like, they were definitely in the like stoner group at school. And I was like, okay, they do acid, like that's cool. I knew like all of my favorite bands that I listened to, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I loved that aesthetic. I just felt like I wasn't fully in it. And I was just having this trouble in my life where I wanted to be this person, and no matter how hard I tried, I felt like I couldn't be this person. And I don't know why, but I just thought that LSD would make me that person. So smart, right? I don't know. I was a kid. Whatever. Can't blame her. And so I did a lot of research, like I will say, because I feel like a lot of teenagers just do shit without thinking about it and impulsively, but like no, I did my research. I wanted to make sure it was safe because I always knew like drugs are scary, like people can die from drugs. You don't want to do anything crazy. So I did a lot of my research. I was like watching YouTube videos of people like literally tripping on acid. I was watching like every different acid movie scene that I could find, even though those aren't really very accurate, I would say. The one in Taking Woodstock, the one from Jobs, the Steve Jobs movie. I was just trying to understand what it was going to be like because I was nervous. I also had this idea that I really wanted acid to like bring me closer to nature, and I wanted to connect more with nature. Like I said, I was very into my hippie era, so I just thought like this was the key to me achieving all my goals in life and being the person I wanted to be. And I just don't really know where that idea came from. I mean, I knew that like psychedelics could alter your mindset, and like I definitely read about that, but I don't know why I just thought like doing a tab of acid was gonna just like change the course of my existence. So bizarre. Anyways, I got really into it, and so kind of planned it out because I had a friend who knew how she could get it. The thing about my friend though was like we were friends, but we weren't super good friends. I don't even think she was going to my school at that point. So at that point, like we had known each other for a long time, but we weren't super close. And I wasn't really friends with any of the other girls either. Like I just kind of knew of them. So really I was kind of going into the situation not really close with anyone. And so it was gonna be me, my friend. I'm gonna give her a name that's like an alias. What should her name be? Sarah. I don't know. So me, my friend Sarah, and then Sarah's friend Lisa were all going to do acid together. And my friend Sarah and my friend Lisa had both done a psychedelic. I don't know if it was LSD, but they had done like something similar. And so they kind of had experience. I obviously didn't. And then the girls that we were getting them from had done it before, like probably multiple times. It was on Memorial Day weekend, and I remember that. It was the day before Memorial Day. So what is that, like a Sunday? And I kind of picked this weekend because I think my parents were kind of doing their own thing, and I was like, I knew that acid lasted a really long time, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go over to her house like around noon. We're gonna do it, and by evening time I'll be completely sober. I can go home and my parents will be none the wiser. And I just told my mom, I was like, oh, I'm just going over to Sarah's house. You know, it was during the day, so she didn't care. And it was right down the street too, like it was definitely like walking distance, still kind of far, but like, you know, it was pretty close. And she knew her, and so she was like, yeah, whatever. My parents definitely like trusted me. I mean, I was just going over to a friend's house. I don't know why they would have thought I was doing LSD, and I was like definitely a very good kid. Like I didn't really do anything crazy. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd smoked weed here and there, but you know, I was not like a drug kid at all. Never really got into trouble, whatever. And so we go over there and we take it, and I was like excited. Again, like I had no prior experience to this, so I wasn't really that scared. I was like, ooh, this is gonna be so fun. I can't wait. It took about 30 minutes to kick in, and at that point, I think some of the other girls had left, and the other girls that were there weren't doing it. It was literally just me, Lisa, and Sarah that were actually doing it, and the other girls were just kind of there hanging out, smoking weed. And I remember it started hitting. I remember looking at Sarah's curtains in her house, and they had patterns on them, and the patterns started like kind of melting. If you've ever done psychedelics, you know what I'm talking about. They were kind of like moving and like pulsing and stuff, and I was like, ooh, okay. It kind of looked like a waterfall. And I was like trying to show her, I was like, oh my god, like look at the curtains. And that's when we noticed that it hit, and we were all in the house, so we were like, ooh, like let's go outside, let's go hang out. And so we were just like laying down outside, like hanging out, talking, just looking at stuff, because it's very interesting when you're on a psychedelic, like just looking at things. People's faces were kind of scary. It was definitely very weird. I remember, like, I don't know. It was interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Acid's cool. Like, it was cool. We were listening to music, and that was my favorite thing. And you guys know, I'm really into music. We were listening to Pink Floyd, which is like one of my favorite bands ever, and I just remember I was like, whoa. I kind of, like, low-key, I still feel like Pink Floyd was like made for psychedelics. Like, it just sounds really cool. We were listening to the Beatles and stuff, just like all my favorite types of music, so I really liked that part. I thought that was really cool. And then I do remember this one thing about, like, I remember looking at the trees, and remember how I said, like, I thought that acid was going to make me closer to nature. And I remember looking at the trees, and the trees looked the same, but like everything else that you looked at was like moving, and I was like, oh, interesting. Like, the trees just seemed beautiful, but they just kind of looked the same. And anyways, the girls who weren't doing acid left, and this is kind of like when things took a turning point. So we decided to go inside, me, Lisa, and Sarah, and we decided to put on the movie Across the Universe, which, such a good movie. It's basically like it's like about the Beatles, essentially, kind of. I mean, it just has like the Beatles music in it. It's so good, highly recommend. But they do have some very interesting scenes that are kind of trippy, and we were watching one of those scenes, and I was having the time of my life. I was like, this is so sick. Me and Lisa were having a great time, and I wasn't really paying attention to any of the other girls. I was just, you know, hanging out watching the movie, like super into it. And I remember Sarah was like drawing on the floor, like on a piece of paper, and it was one of the trippy scenes, and I was like, oh my god, Sarah, like look at the TV, like it's so cool, like you need to be watching this movie, because she like wasn't paying attention. And it was kind of like as soon as I addressed her, she started freaking out. Like, she was drawing, and then she like went into full on like paranoia mode. Like, it was bizarre. And I was not like having a bad trip. I was quite frankly really enjoying myself, having a great old time. Wasn't scared, whatever. And she like genuinely went berserk. I do not know how else to describe it besides her having like an absolute manic episode, to the point where it felt like I was in a scary movie where somebody was literally possessed by a demon. And this was not me like hallucinating this, like this was genuinely what was going on. She locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the shower, and we were freaking out because we were like, what did she do? Like, she wasn't responding to us, and we were like, I don't know if she's gonna like hurt herself. Like, I didn't know what she was doing. She was acting so weird, like so out of character. So we were like banging on the door, and obviously like when you're on a drug, everything else is like heightened. Like, everything just, even though it was a really scary situation, it just seemed so more out of control, because it's like I was not in my right headspace. So it's like I felt like I couldn't really help the situation, and it just turned creepy. She like came out of the bathroom, she started repeating words over and over, like almost like chanting. She was drenched in wet, like she had taken a shower, but she did not dry herself off. She was just soaking wet. Pretty sure she wasn't wearing clothes, and she was like tramping around the house, just like repeating random words. And me and Lisa were freaking out, because we were like, what on earth is going on? And Sarah was just like running around like a maniac, crying, screaming, just making absolutely no sense. You couldn't try to calm her down. You could not console her. Anything I was saying, I was trying to like bring her back to reality. I was like, Sarah, look, like I was like saying like, okay, it's Sunday, it's this date, it's this time, like trying to just like remind her that she's okay. But that made it way much worse. Like when I said what time it was, she was like, time. Like I'm not even kidding. She like started freaking out. At one point she ran out the front door, like wrapped in a blanket, and locked herself in her mom's car in the neighborhood, and was like crying in the car. And we were freaking out because we're like, oh my God, like the neighbors are gonna see, we're gonna get in trouble. They're gonna know we did acid. Like I just thought we were gonna get in trouble, and I didn't want her to be like out, and like we didn't want the neighbors to see. Anyways, it was just insane. I was trying to call people, like the girls that have been here before and like people that we knew, to like come over to help, because me and Lisa were on acid. Like we really couldn't do anything. We were tripping. And this girl was completely like out of her mind, like just absolutely insane, bonkers. Like we could not do anything for the situation. We were scared. But talking on the phone was like, I don't know how to describe it. I was talking on the phone, Sarah's screaming, there was a helicopter flying overhead, I think. Maybe I was imagining that, I don't remember. But it's like every single sound, even if it was really far away, just sounded like they were all the same volume in my head. So I was trying to talk to somebody on the phone, and their voice just sounded like there were just so many noises going on. I couldn't even like have a conversation on the phone. I was like, I don't know. I was literally just like begging somebody to come over. Finally, we get someone to come over, but it's this guy that I didn't really know. And I don't think he really knew the situation he was getting into. And also he's like a teenage boy, so he probably has no idea what to do. It wasn't like we called an adult. It was like we called another kid to come over and help. And as soon as he came over, the situation honestly became worse, because I think Sarah and him had like some sort of beef. Like they had some weird relationship or something, which I didn't really know about. But Sarah starts freaking out even more. She starts clawing at I was wearing like this crochet sweater, and she starts like clawing and like ripping at my sweater like a rabid animal. And I freak out because I'm like, oh my God, like get off me. Like this is terrifying. And I remember Sarah and the other guy and the guy who got there went into the house. I was in the backyard because I was like, I just want to get away from her. Like I'm scared she's gonna hurt me. And I just remember I hear this huge sound of like smashing glass. And the guy who came over was like, oh my God, like what the fuck? And was yelling. And I was like, I immediately was like in fight or flight mode. Booked it. I think I jumped over the fence. I don't remember. I booked it. I was like, I need to get out of here. I literally thought that she was going, like I thought Sarah was going to kill us. Genuinely thought she was going to kill us. Which like the sound of the smashing glass, she had thrown a bong, like a huge glass bong, at the guy that had come over. So, I mean, I think she might have like hit him with a guitar too. I don't remember. So like, honestly, probably not that far-fetched that I thought that she was gonna hurt me. Mind you, she wasn't doing any of this intentionally. Like this was not her fault. She was like, I've talked to her after this whole situation. She blacked out. Like she doesn't remember any of this. So she was just like out of her mind, like out of control. So I booked it. I sprinted home. Like I said, I lived not too far away, but probably like at least a couple miles. But I sprinted home, and I was freaking out too, because I'm like running like a maniac barefoot through these suburbs. And I also was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get home. Like my parents are gonna be there. I didn't care though. I was like, I need to get out of this situation. I need to go to safety. I need to be okay. That's all I cared about. So anyways, I ended up going home, and when I got home, my parents weren't there, but I knew they were gonna come home, and I just knew that I needed to tell them, because for one, I was really scared about what was going on at the other house. I wanted to make sure everyone was gonna be okay. I knew that an adult needed to go over there to like help the situation. I was worried about my friends. Like I thought something bad was really gonna happen. So I felt like I needed to tell my parents. So I called my parents and I was like, hey, so I'm on acid. And they immediately freaked the fuck out. Like, because to them, like, I had never done anything bad. I was this very good straight A student. They were quite literally floored and freaking out. I don't even think they were mad at me. I think they were just like completely in utter shock that I spoke that sentence out loud. But I was like, I didn't even care. Like I had like, it was weird. I had like no emotion. Like I couldn't feel emotion. It was really weird. I was just like, look, I don't care. I'm on acid, whatever. Forget that part. But you need to go to that house because something bad's gonna happen. You need to call like Sarah's dad or someone, like someone needs to go over there. Like I'm worried. And so I think my mom did end up calling Sarah's dad, and a bunch of people ended up going over to the house. I actually had my mom go over there because I left my shoes and I was like, I need my shoes. So my mom had to go over there, and Sarah was getting like subdued by all of these people. She had to get held down on the floor and she had to get hospitalized. She was okay, but quite frankly, the scariest situation I've ever been in, to be honest with you, especially as a child. So that was the story. Everything was fine, and I've never done it again since, and I probably won't ever do it again. Definitely should not have done that as a child. So what did I learn from this situation? As a teenager, when I arose from the situation, literally the next day I was having a lot of like self-reflection about it, and I was like, okay, I really wanted this experience to bring me closer to nature. Did it? Well, I was thinking back to when I was like looking at the trees and how they didn't really change, and I was like, I had this kind of epiphany. I was like, I don't need a drug to bring me closer to nature. I felt like me doing acid and me realizing that like the trees were the only thing that didn't seem to change. Everything else looked different. I was like, the trees don't change because they're already like perfect the way they are. Like they're just supposed to be like that. You don't need a drug to make you realize that. You don't need a drug to bring you closer to nature. Nature just is there. Like you are already close to nature. And for some reason, like I was literally a 16-year-old. I don't know why I was like having these weird self-reflection thoughts. But after that, I was like, I don't need drugs or alcohol or like partying. Like I don't need any of those things. I just want to be like healthy and wholesome and whatever. And so I did kind of like, I stopped drinking, which is so bizarre because it's like it's just so weird that I was like 16 years old and I was like, I'm not gonna drink anymore. Like that's usually when people start, you know what I mean? I had been drinking, I mean, only for like a year, but I was like, I'm not gonna drink anymore. I decided to stop smoking weed too. And I was like, I don't need drugs, I don't need alcohol. And that's kind of when I really got into my raw vegan, like health and wellness thing. So I would still go to parties, but I would be the DD. I would drink kombucha. I would literally bring kombucha to parties as a 16-year-old. Like I was a very, very bizarre teenager. I don't know. It's just funny to me because I'm like, I love that I made this like very adult decision as a child. I was like, I don't need drugs or alcohol anymore. Like I'm going to be wholesome and healthy. And so, yeah, I didn't drink or do any drugs or like the only drugs I was doing was weed, you know? I just stopped doing all of that, got really into my health, got really into working out. And that's pretty much when I got really into my YouTube channel. So that's when all of you guys, well, I had started before that, but that's when I got like really into it. And so that's my story of that. And I think that it's hard to say if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to not do acid because again, I felt like I needed to do that to like, I don't know if it would have changed my life that much, but I don't know. Like it's weird. I think that everything happens for a reason. So it's hard for me to be like, I would go back in time and tell myself not to do that because I kind of felt like I needed to, or I didn't need to. No one needs to do acid, but it was just an experience that I experienced. And I also think it was a good thing that I experienced the really scary part of it, even though I didn't have the scary trip, but I saw what it could do to people. And I saw what drugs could do to somebody. That was very eye-opening for me because in my head, I was like, nothing can go bad with acid. Like it's this amazing psychedelic, like you're only going to have a wonderful experience. And I think it was a good thing that I saw like how scary drugs can be. And who knows if I hadn't done that, like maybe I would have gotten really into drugs. I don't know. But I think that I'm glad that I saw that because as a teenager, it's like, oh, that's like reality. Like you could do a drug and shit could go awry. Bad things can happen. Drugs are serious adult shit. Like you don't need to be doing that as a kid. I had, it was a very like adult situation I was in, kind of just like a really scary, like a very scary reality that I experienced. And so I'm actually glad that I did experience that. I'm lucky that I don't think it like completely altered my brain because obviously my brain was still developing. So doing a psychedelic as your brain's developing is probably not the greatest idea. And I have heard horror stories of people. I think that's when people probably do it a lot, but you never know. I could have been the one hospitalized, so I think it's a good thing I saw that. But I think if I could go back in time and tell my teenage self one thing, and one very important thing, it would be stop being so hard on yourself and like stop trying to be somebody else. Because I was so hyper focused and like obsessed with being this person and trying to be somebody I wasn't, and thinking that all of these external things were going to change that about me and make me somebody new. Like I literally thought that like acid was the key. Like I was going to be somebody else after doing it. And in a way it did change me in some ways, but it's like I didn't need to do that to realize that, you know what I mean? And to be honest with you, I feel like I've always had that mentality. It hasn't really changed that much, where I'm really hard on myself because I always have this like this vision of myself, my ideal self. And if I'm not that person and I'm not working towards being that person, I get hard on myself and I beat myself up. And
it really started back then. Like that was when I started thinking that way and being so hard on myself about this. And it's like, you were literally a teenager, like you were a child. I just wish that I had been way more carefree. Like I wish that I had not cared so much about, even though I feel like it's kind of cool that I was like so introspective as a kid and like as a teenager, which I feel like most teenagers are like, like I just want to, I don't know, do teenage stuff. I was like thinking adult thoughts. But I wish that I hadn't. Like, why did I care so much about my diet when I was a teenager? Like, I should have just been eating whatever I wanted. Like, I was literally a kid. I just wish that I wish I could go back and just be like, yeah, look, you're fine. Like, you are fine the way you are. You don't need to try to be somebody else, because that mindset has probably like been the most fucked up thing that I've had my entire life. Like, since then, I've had this. I'm very self-reflective. I'm very, very hard on myself. I'm very self-aware. And it's a blessing and a curse, but it's kind of a curse. I wish I was just more like, I don't care. I don't know. I also wish that I just kind of embraced, again, being a teenager. I just felt like the entire time I was in high school, I was like, I can't wait to get out of high school and like travel and be an adult. And it's like, I wish I would have just lived my life and been silly and goofy and experienced the teenage years the way that you're supposed to. I was so focused on getting out of them and escaping and becoming an adult. And now look at me, I'm 25 and I'm like, ugh, I would do anything to go back in that time and just like do anything, like live my life as a teenager, like when nothing matters and you have no care in the world. And now it's like, I gotta pay rent, I gotta pay bills, I gotta pay my taxes, like you gotta do all this stuff. And it's like, ugh, I just wish I'd embraced it more. And same, like I feel like the same advice can be applied to not just teenage years, but also early 20s. I spent, again, so much time, and there's so many things I wish I would have just started and gotten into and stopped waiting for things to be perfect. And yeah, and I mean, who knows, like 5 years from now, I'm probably gonna look at my time now and been like, I wish I could go back and tell her things. And we can't do that. It's impossible. But I want to start applying the things that I would tell my teenage self. The things are probably things that my future self is probably going to be telling me. Like, stop beating yourself up about things. Stop trying to be someone you're not. Stop worrying about so many things. Like, just live your life. And it's so frustrating because it's like, your future self knows these things and you realize these things once you look in your past. But when you're actually in the moment, it's so hard to think about. It's so hard to be like, just embrace your life, just embrace this moment as it truly is, instead of trying to worry about the future. And then your future self looks back and you're like, damn, I spent so much time worrying about the future. And then it's like this cycle that just keeps repeating, and it's bizarre. It's so bizarre, and it's so hard to break out of this mindset. But I feel like that is genuinely the key to life is to stop waiting for things to be perfect. Stop trying to be this person and thinking like, if I have this, then my life will be amazing. If I do this, then life will be great. Just live for now, genuinely. And that was literally like the thing that started it all, was like, I'm going to do acid. And when I do acid, everything's going to be amazing and perfect and wonderful. And I'm going to become the person that I always wanted to be. It's like, girl, you don't need to do LSD to become the person you want to be. You just got to start. Like, I really wanted to be a surfer girl. I really wanted to travel. There's like so many things I wanted to be, and I could have just done them without having to do a very serious psychedelic substance in order to have that realization. And it's just still a mindset that I struggle with, is just being pleased and accepting and satisfied with the moment as it is now, and my life as it is now, and who I am as I am now. I'm always striving to be better and more. And it is an endless cycle that you can't break free of until you change your mindset, until you break free of that thought pattern. Because until you break free of it, it will just keep repeating itself. And I also just wish that, I wish I had stopped wishing so badly that I was an adult, because, like, And even though it was kind of cool and probably a good thing that I stopped drinking alcohol and smoking weed for a while when I was a teenager, at the same time, I kind of wish I hadn't, because it's like, you're a teenager, like, just go have fun. Like, you don't need to be having these, like, oh, I'm not going to drink anymore. Like, I'm not going to smoke weed anymore. Like, just go do it. Like, go to parties, drink a little, make some mistakes. You don't need, like, you're 16. You don't need to be, acting like you're an alcoholic or something. Like, I don't know. I don't like to live with regret, and I don't want to say I regret anything, because it's pointless. There's literally no point in thinking that way. It's not going to get you anywhere. And so I don't. But at the same time, I do wish that I could go back and just like say I have some words to say to her. And I wish I could, but it's okay because I'm here now because of those things. So anyways, that was my little story time episode today with a little sprinkling of life advice. Hopefully you liked this episode. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. I will be here next Monday.